Sector Unknown is a sci-fi CRPG that has tried to take inspiration from some of the greats, and that includes Knights of the Old Republic and Fallout. But Sector Unknown is an indie game that is made by a single developer, so obviously you don't want to assume the latest and greatest in terms of cinematics and polish. What Sector Unknown does do is pretty compelling. There are a few things in particular I thought sounded really cool, one being the idea of this war score that creates an overarching thing to track as you play the game. You get involved in a rebellion against a much larger faction than yourself, and to do so you'll have to do things like build fleets, get planets that join you, and boost your score by upgrading everything along the way. Actually reminds me a bit of Mass Effect 3, not in the bad way of reminding me of the ending, but in how everything you do affects various outcomes of this war. But this isn't a strategy game, this is a CRPG, and that means that the majority of your game will be taking place with your boots on the ground. There are a variety of different planets that you'll be exploring that each have their own things going on, and being a CRPG means that you have a ton of different stats and abilities to play with. Depending on what you choose to focus on, there will be different options available to you when you have to make choices and when you're roaming around, and this becomes immediately apparent in the first 20 minutes of the game. If you have stats that allow you to open the various lockers and chests, you'll leave with a lot more loot. If you can talk your way through guards with speech checks, you won't even have to fight a single time. And you won't be doing this alone. You'll find companions to join you along the way, who not only have their own stories and reasons for doing things, but also contribute to your stats and all of these various checks. And, different companions have different levels of those sorts of thing as well. For example, you can find a robot that doesn't necessarily have as much story stuff going on. But all of these stat points mean that what you decide to do with your points actually makes a pretty big difference in the gameplay, which is always something that I think should be happening in a CRPG, something that made games like Fallout New Vegas really stand out. The companions aren't necessarily as fleshed out as something like Mass Effect or Baldur's Gate 3, but they have their own distinct personalities and stories, and they can even have their own quests to do as well. And in Sector Unknown, you'll have your own base, where you get the ability to do things like craft weapons, armor, and even craft starships. Eventually, there's even a bounty hunting terminal, where you can pick up various contracts if you'd like to do that. And the big idea with the overarching systems like the war score is that you're supposed to be trying to unite the various planets so they can help you in your rebellion. As you're doing that, you'll discover that each of these planets has their own thing going on, various factions that don't necessarily get along you'll have to choose to either help or use for your own purposes. There's even ship-to-ship combat and exploration using your own ship, which is how you get to all of these planets to begin with. Sometimes you might find things that are just out in space while you're flying around. And the cool thing about this game is something that I really appreciate in CRPGs, and that's the ability to approach situations in multiple different ways. All of the abilities that you have and that you work on throughout the game are what allows you to do that. You can avoid a lot of various combat situations just based on the skills that you have, so it's important to think about that as you put together your party. And in this game, you can have 3 additional characters with you beside yourself, so it's kind of on the smaller side in terms of party size for characters. Combat is turn-based, both the combat on the ground with your party and in space battles. Those of you who are more into that style of combat will like this more. Combat is solid here. It isn't something that is completely new. If you've played other CRPGs with turn-based combat, you'll basically know what you're getting yourself into. You have action points. Use those action points, do your abilities, make basic attacks. And there are a variety of different weapon types to choose from, both melee, mid-range, and long-range. If you're a combat-centric person, this may not necessarily be the game for you. This combat is more of a serviceable and decently fun thing with some depth, but it's not the central focus of the game. I'm pretty happy with what I've played of Sector Unknown, especially because there really aren't as many sci-fi CRPGs as there are fantasy, so it's nice to be able to play around with something in a different setting. And this is a game from a single dev who is still fine-tuning their craft, but I feel like this game has shown me that they have potential. It sounds like their plan is to continue supporting the game, so even though there are some bugs right now, those should get ironed out over time. If you really hate bugs, maybe wait for a little bit. Sector Unknown is relatively cheap and offers quite a bit for that price, so I definitely recommend people to at least check it out. And for more videos about RPGs of all kinds, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.